Welcome to Pawpaw's Workshop. Well, I've got another scrap wood project for you today, and today this is something that is long overdue in the shop. I'm building this lumber cart out of nothing but scraps, and it went through tons of revisions to get it to this stage, and it was all because of the material that I had available. So let's get started. Let me show you how I built this today. A day in the shop with Pawpaw in Pawpaw's Workshop. To support my channel, please go to patreon.com/pawpawsworkshop. In today's video, I'm building a much needed lumber cart, all from scrap wood gathered from around my shop. I'm going to build the base of this lumber cart out of a 3/4 inch piece of scrap plywood. Now this is going to be 30 inches wide and 48 inches long. Now the next thing, I need to be able to support this plywood base, because with the weight that's going to be placed onto this lumber cart, this plywood would bow. So in order to accomplish that, I'm taking some old 2x6s and I'm cutting those in half. That way it'll provide the strength that I need and support for the wheels. Now with all of that material cut, I'm just taking the glue and I want to put ample glue all along the bottom of this board, and then I'm going to use an 1 5/8 long screw to be able to screw it to the base. And one 2x6 cut in half gives me the support for each side. And then a little smaller scrap piece will go into the ends. Next, it's time to add the wheels. Now for this, I'm using a 4-inch wheel, and I'm setting it back 2 inches from the end, because with the wheels extending forward, I don't want that wheel out in front of the cart. So with a measurement set of 2 inches for the setback, I'm going to go ahead and mark that now for each of the corners. Now with the wheel in place, I can actually take the pencil and mark the hole locations and then pre-drill those holes. That's going to ensure that it doesn't split out. And I'm just using the appropriate size drill bit to be able to accommodate the lag screws. Now I gotta tell you, I'm using several different size lag screws, so I did have to switch and use a couple of different bits to get the proper pilot hole drilled. Now these lag screws that I'm using are actually recycled from other projects that I've had in the past. Because when I take apart a project, I'll just take the different hardware that I can recycle and throw it into a bin. And that's where these lag screws came from. So some of them are galvanized, some are not. Some are a little bit larger than the others, and some have a little bit of rust on them. But bottom line is, it's going to work and hold these wheels on just fine. Now the base of this is actually completed. All the wheels are on and all the support members are in place, glued and screwed in. Now it's time to flip it over and start working on the top side. And again, I'm back to taking some old scrap 2x6s, and they're not the straightest in the world. You can see here that they are very definitely bowed, but they'll work for my purpose, and when I cut them down, it's going to be much easier to be able to work with these old bowed 2x6s. For the vertical uprights, I want to be able to use a half lap joint, and to be able to accomplish that, I raised the blade up halfway to be able to cut halfway through the material, and then I'm going to slide the fence over so that the blade is going to cut just to the width of the material, and that's it. And there's no tape measure needed for this. You just use the material itself as the guide to set up the saw the proper way. And then from there, you just go ahead and cut out that notch to be able to create the half lap. Now granted, I could have taken the time to be able to put in a dado set, but quite frankly, by the time I would have done that, I will already have these joints cut, tested, and ready to install. Now I went ahead and did a test cut just to make sure that everything was perfect. And you can see here, that's exactly what I'm looking for. It fits perfectly, it's smooth on all the sides. So now let's go ahead and cut the regular uprights. Okay, with those all cut, it's time to glue them together. So I'm going to use plenty of the wood glue to be able to hold it in place. In addition to that, I'm going to use some 1-inch brad staples to be able to hold it as well. And that's going to be acting, quite frankly, like a clamp until this glue dries. So the only thing you have to do with this is just be able to put this joint together. It aligns itself virtually perfectly with the 90 degrees just by the nature of the joint itself, but still you use the speed square just to make sure. And then you take the 1-inch staples, and just a couple staples is all that's necessary, and that's going to hold it until that glue dries. Now, because these uprights are acting as a handle also, and if I'm pushing the cart around the shop, this is where my hands are going to go. So I just took a round sleeve that I had, and I'm using that to be able to mark the radius. And then from there, grab the jigsaw, cut that radius off, and then I'll take it over to the sander and smooth that edge so it'll be easy to be able to grip. Now, doing this process looks a little bit more awkward than it actually was, but it was just a matter of just running over that edge, and that was it. It wasn't that big of a deal, even though it looks a little strange on that sander. But it did give me a nice sharp 90-degree angle, and that's what I was looking for. Now, the last thing I want to do with these uprights is take this 1/4-inch radius round over a bit in my trim router and just round over the edges, because that's going to make it a lot easier to be able to handle and move this lumber cart. When I grab hold of these uprights to move it, I want these edges to be nice and smooth, and this was an easy way to accomplish that. Next, I wanted to add these 2 long runners on the middle of this cart. Now, this allows me to be able to put the plywood and slide it into the cart. And to accomplish that, I just marked on the back side where those runners need to be. I pre-drilled the holes, and then from there clamped those runners in place with the glue and screwed them into position. Now then, it's time to be able to get ready to install the uprights, and to do that I took some 1/2-inch piece of plywood, cut it in the form of a triangle, and went ahead and did the same thing. Put it on the ends, made sure that it was perfectly square, and screwed them into position. Then all I needed to do is just take these uprights, drop those right down in position where they needed to be, make sure that it was perfectly square or vertical to my platform, and with the glue and screws, screwed it into position. Nothing complicated or hard about this design, but I will say this lumber cart went through probably a dozen different revisions and design changes, and it was all based on the material that I had available to make this lumber cart work. To be able to add some extra support and strength to this lumber cart, I went ahead and took this 1/2-inch piece of plywood, cut it to size, and then screwed it in to position. Now, this helps to stabilize these uprights to be able to keep it from moving in either direction. The triangle pieces keep it from moving one way. This plywood keeps it from moving the other way, and that adds a lot of strength. The plywood itself, I went ahead and added a strip of the cut down 2x6s to be able to keep it stable and strong on this top edge. So basically that strip that I put on top was a 1.5 by 1.5, and I just glued and screwed that into position also. And I took an 1 5/8 inch long screw and screwed that through the upright into that runner that I had, and that adds even more strength to it. Now, on this side of the lumber cart, this is designed to be able to either hold small scraps of plywood, or I could put in a 5-gallon bucket to hold scrap wood. But just to be able to keep it versatile, I went ahead and added this little 1/2-inch piece of plywood down here so that it would in essence be a stop, so that if I have the lumber stacked on it, this would keep it from falling off the edge. Or a 5-gallon bucket sits in there with no problem at all. Now, on the other side of the cart, I decided to make a shelf where I could put long strips of molding in. And that way I can have all my molding on this same lumber cart, and it can just lay in here, and that way it will stay flat. And underneath that is a shelf that I can just put little small odds and ends. Now, this piece of plywood I think is actually 3/8 of an inch, so it's even smaller, but with the runners that I have and support, it's plenty strong. and I'm just using the 1-inch staple to be able to hold it in position along with the glue. So it's not going to go anywhere. And to be able to complete it, I needed a little bit of a face frame to be able to keep that molding from falling off. So I took another piece of 3/8 inch scrap plywood and just cut out a little bit of face and then stapled it on. And then from there, it's time to be able to show you the completed cart. So this is the side that'll hold the small pieces of the plywood or the buckets. You have plenty of room to be able to put the full sheets, and then on the other side, you got plenty of room to be able to put the small pieces and the long molding. Thank you for watching today. I really enjoyed making this lumber cart. It was a much needed project, and I can't believe how many different revisions that it went through, because I had started out with one design, made changes, and made changes based on the material that I had available. But in the end, it's worked out really well. I've got a lumber cart now that holds all my plywood, all of my molding, and it's not bad. Much needed. And the nice thing about it is, if I need to move the cart, it's on wheels. I can roll it anywhere that I need to. Thank you for watching today. And please hit that subscribe button and the little bell notification next to it so that you'll be reminded and notified on all the videos that I'm uploading. I've got some exciting things coming up very soon. I'm going to be upgrading my X-Carve to the new upgrade kit that's presented by Inventables, and I'm going to be answering some questions that have been on people's mind for a long time about doing the raised text type of projects. You're not going to want to miss that. So please go ahead and hit that subscribe button and the little bell notification so that you'll be notified when those videos are published. So again, thank you for watching today, and I look forward to seeing you in the shop on the next project.